show up in our voice. I didn't hear that in his voice. And so I don't know if that's because he was putting a positive spin on it, or if it's because people weren't telling him. I just can't,
I speculate.
How can I know?
I speculate, JR, it's his ego. Because ever since he was a kid in high school, we talk about that here on the show all the time. In your piece, you wrote, "We've never really seen this in sports before, where someone goes almost overnight from hero to villain," and that's so true. But elaborate on that.
Well, first, I said that in an interview about my piece. And,
okay.
And just to be clear, what I said is we've never seen a sports figure go from hero to villain almost overnight based on a marketing gaffe, based on a television special. Normally, well, we've seen plenty of sports icons become villains overnight, but it's always because of something they did. It's some harm they caused, some law they broke. This is a different case. I can't think of another case like this in sports history. Cleveland, of course, feels that he did something. He betrayed Cleveland, but I wonder if he had presented this news differently, if he'd built up to it differently, if he'd prepared Cleveland for it differently, if he'd announced it differently. Would we be talking about this as a betrayal? Would he be public enemy number one in America at large? I don't think so. I just think that his sin is a marketing sin. It's a colossal. I mean, it's a huge mistake the way he's presented himself, or the way people around him have presented him. But that's what I was getting at in that interview. I was saying that, Tiger Woods, with whom he shares a birthday, he had a similar fall from grace this year, but it was because of, huge transgressions. And still, the anger aimed at Tiger isn't anything like the anger aimed at James.
Right.
I mean, it's mostly mockery that's aimed at Tiger. He's become the butt of jokes. He's become kind of a pathetic figure.
Yes.
But James has been demonized. And, I understand the anger of Cleveland fans, but I don't think any reasonable Cleveland fan would compare what James did with what Tiger did. I mean,
right.
Being a serial cheater on your wife and, choosing a different team, those are not in the same ballpark. And yet, look at the anger, look at the venom. Go on Twitter and look at what people are saying
Absolutely.
about James and his family and his mother. This is different. This what's happening with James is different than what's happened to any sports icon that I can think of. So that's what I was driving at.
Right, and just to the mood here, there is no one here that doesn't recognize that he had a perfect right to leave. He was a free agent, but it's the way he did it.
Right.
Had he informed the cat, now he did promise that he would stay here to win a championship. But even with that, after the elimination to Boston, had he gone to the Cavaliers and said, "Listen, I hate to break my promise, but I think it's in my best interest to move on. I wanted to let you know as soon as possible so you can go to plan B." But he had given the impression to the fans, and most importantly, the poor organization, that he was going to stay up until that ridiculous television show.
Mm-hmm. And I hear what you're saying, and I also hear, a lot of people blaming ego. My own theory, my own feeling after meeting him and spending time with him is that it's more immaturity than ego. I really feel strongly that this is a question of immaturity and not a question of ego. I'm not saying you can ever factor ego out of the equation when you're dealing with famous people and celebrities, but it feels to me like that case we've all observed, and many of us have been guilty of ourselves, where you're young and you take the easy way out. You don't step up, you don't speak to somebody directly, you don't make the call, you don't drop by and give someone a heads up. This feels like the kind of thing that your parents try and drum into you as you're growing up. You need to make this right. You need to do right by this person. You need to go and tell this person. You need to call this person. This is a question of maturity. It's the kind of thing
Right.
your dad would tell you. No, this is not how we do it.
I think you're exactly right. These sessions that you conducted before the announcement, did you have any inclination of what the so-called decision? See, we believe this was a conspiracy and contrived for the last three. When the three of them decided to give their respective franchises 3-year extensions, that's where it started. And but did he give you any indication in the 2 sessions prior to the announcement?
No, I mean, he was very, very cryptic with me, just as he was with everybody in the weeks and months leading up. And so all of this is theorizing, and maybe that's part of what makes it so fascinating and so mesmerizing. Is everyone's theory is as good as everyone else's. But from reading the tea leaves, from reading his body language, from asking him questions and having them either evade them or answer them in ways that felt less than authentic, my feeling is less that it was a conspiracy and more that it was a struggle within him. I mean, maybe Ohioans don't want to hear this, maybe they do, but I do feel that what kept this from being a slam dunk, what kept Miami from being the clear choice was an attachment that he felt to the place where he grew up. Maybe there's some ambivalence there about Cleveland or about Dan Gilbert or about the team, and maybe that factors into it too. But that doesn't mitigate the fact that I think he felt a very strong pull. I think. Well,
I respectfully disagree with you there.
I know you will. I know you will.
And because of what he just came out, it said to you about Cleveland.
Well,
I mean, what did he mean when he said to you, "Well, they're the bigger city guys compared to us. We hate them. We still hate them today."
I know, and I don't. I hate to spoil a good conspiracy theory, and I don't want to rain on an anger parade. But and if I were a Cleveland fan, maybe I would just be unable to say this, let alone think it. But no, you have to read that Cleveland quote in the context. What we were talking about, this is very important. We were talking about Jordan and how he worshipped Jordan growing up, and that didn't make sense to me as a sports fan. I said, how do you grow up in Cleveland and root for Jordan and have pictures of Jordan all over your wall when Jordan tormented the Cavs? And he said, so coming out of that, he said, you don't understand, I'm not from Cleveland, I'm from Akron. And so when we went to tournaments, Cleveland kids kind of, they looked down on us, and he was being genuine. He was talking about real experiences he had where he felt and his friends felt like they were coming from this hick town and Cleveland kids looked down on them. He was talking about boyhood experiences, and that quote has been turned into something where he was saying that all his life he hated Cleveland, and he always kept this distinction between Akron and Cleveland, and that's not what that quote was.
But that just reinforces our belief that he is so out of touch with reality, because that is, JR, that is not the case here. I mean, the television that he watched growing up are licensed Cleveland television stations.
I know. But he's also a kid who didn't, when I was following him around, I was shuttling back and forth between Cleveland and Akron, and there is a different vibe to the two places. I mean, if Akron felt more suburban, is that what you say? I mean, it's a college town. It just felt a little slower, a little leafier. It did feel a little bit further than the 35 or 40 miles, and maybe to a kid, I don't want to invalidate his experience. I think it's important to take him at his word about certain things so you can get at the truth. If he did feel that way growing up, that's just how he felt growing up. I don't think it plays a role in this decision, and he wasn't saying that. He really wasn't. He wasn't saying that, I could leave Cleveland with, blithely and casually because I never felt like a Clevelander in my life. I mean, he said a lot of things in the story about Cleveland fans and about feeling badly about disappointing Cleveland fans. And I mean, I don't, as I say, I don't like to spoil a good conspiracy theory. But he really, won't. That quote, you have to look at that quote. When the piece comes out, please take another look at that quote.
We will. But again, another example that he says to you, of how we believe he is so out of touch with reality. He can't possibly believe when he said to you that he would be open-minded to coming back here. I mean, that's just that's an alien mindset, JR.
I know, but now you're making my point, and that's what I'm trying to say is, even though that that shows that he's disconnected from this situation, that he doesn't have a full grasp of the anger and the hurt in Cleveland. It also shows what I'm talking about, this ambivalence he's always had. This part of him that has never wanted to leave Cleveland is real, and I don't know how you can deny it when you look at that quote. If he was going off to Miami and